The note was folded into a sharp little triangle and set on my pillow like a hotel chocolate, and the first line, in my roommate's careful handwriting, said, "Don't call anyone, especially not Daniel." It was 3:04 in the morning. I know because I checked my phone before I picked the note up, the way you check the water before you step into it, and the second line was worse than the first. The coffee tin. Tonight before you sleep. I'm sorry, Mara. A. Adam's bedroom door stood open across the hall. His bed was made with military corners, which he never did. His laptop was gone, his jacket was gone. The little dish where he dropped his keys every night for 14 months was empty, and the apartment had that particular silence that isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of someone having left carefully. I want to tell you I did the smart thing. I want to tell you I sat down, breathed, thought it through. What I actually did was stand in my hallway at 3 in the morning in an oversized bakery t-shirt, holding a triangle of paper, whispering, "What the hell, Adam," to a closed front door, and then I walked into the kitchen and took down the coffee tin. Let me back up exactly 40 seconds, because that's all the backstory you're getting before this gets worse. I'm Mara. I'm 29. I run a 6-table bakery that barely runs me. 2 years ago, my mother died and left everything she had in a trust. And the man managing that trust is Daniel Voss, estate attorney, beautiful teeth, and, until 14 months ago, my fiancé. When the engagement ended, I needed rent help, so I posted a roommate ad, and a quiet man named Adam Reyes answered it with a deposit in cash and a toolbox, and he has spent 14 months fixing my garbage disposal, remembering my allergy to hazelnuts, and never once leaving me a note that read like a hostage situation. The coffee tin was where we kept emergency cash. $40 usually. A takeout menu. A dead battery. That night it held $3,000 in banded hundreds. A small brass key with the number 214 stamped on it. And a black flash drive wrapped in a second note. "Everything is in order! Read it in order!" Don't skip ahead. You always skip ahead. A. He was right. I always skip ahead. I read the last page of books first. But my hands were shaking too hard to be clever. So I got my laptop, sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the oven, and opened the drive. One folder. Mara, read in order. 12 files, numbered. File 1 was a spreadsheet, and I almost laughed because of course the most frightening night of my life would open with a spreadsheet. It was my mother's trust. Every account, every disbursement. 3 years of transactions laid out in Adam's meticulous formatting. And running down the right-hand column, highlighted in a yellow so bright it looked like a scream, were the withdrawals. Administrative fee, advisory fee, property management fee, consulting disbursement. 14 of them, 22 of them. I stopped counting at 30 and looked at the total instead. $193,000. Gone from my mother's trust, in 3 years, in slices thin enough that no single one would make anyone look twice. Every authorization signed by the trustee. Every authorization signed by Daniel. I sat on my kitchen floor and felt the room tilt, and that is the exact moment my phone lit up on the counter above my head. "Daniel, you up?" "Drove past your block on my way home from the airport. Saw Adam leaving with a bag. Everything okay over there?" 3:41 a.m. Read that again the way I had to. Daniel, who lives 20 minutes away, who had no reason on earth to be on my street at 3 in the morning, knew Adam was gone before I'd finished finding out why. I looked at the text. I looked at the note on the counter. "Don't call anyone, especially not Daniel." I didn't answer. I turned off my phone's read receipts with the specific dread of a woman realizing the phone itself might be the problem, and then I crossed to the front window and moved the curtain 1 inch. A dark SUV sat across the street, 2 houses down, engine off, parking lights off, and the pale blue glow of a phone screen floating behind the windshield. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a neighbor. I told myself both of those things while I locked the deadbolt, and while I was standing there with my hand on the lock, I noticed something I had walked past every day for a year. The little smoke detector above our entryway. The one Adam installed last spring. The one that, I realized as I dragged a chair over and looked at it properly for the first time, had no test button, no brand name, and a lens. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a camera, and it was pointed at my front door. File 4 on the flash drive was labeled door. I should have read in order. I skipped ahead. He knew I would. It was footage. Clips, dated, organized into subfolders by month, and every clip showed the same thing. My front door opening on a weekday afternoon while I was at the bakery, and Daniel walking into my apartment with a key I never gave him. Setting his coat on my hook like he lived there, going through the mail on my table, sitting. In one clip he just sits in my reading chair for 10 minutes, scrolling his phone, comfortable, unhurried, a man in a home he considers his. 11 clips. 11 afternoons. Adam had typed a single line into a text file in the same folder, and it was the first thing that night that made me cry. Not the money, not the SUV, this. He's been in your home 11 times. You deserve to know before I could prove why. I didn't sleep. You knew that from the title. Here's what you don't know yet. The sun came up, the SUV was gone, and at 8:15 in the morning there was a knock on my door, 3 polite raps, and when I opened it, no one was there. Just an envelope taped at eye level, my name typed on the front, the return address a law firm whose letterhead I'd once imagined on my wedding invitations. Halloran and Pierce, LLP. Atten, Daniel Voss, Esquire. Inside, on heavy paper, in language engineered to sound routine. Notice of final trust distribution and asset liquidation. The trust, my mother's trust, the one that technically owned the very condo I was standing in, was being concluded. Assets consolidated, property listed for transfer, and there, in bold, in the middle of the page, the sentence that started the clock on everything that came after. Final disbursement and transfer of title will be executed Friday at 12 p.m. It was Tuesday morning. I had 3 days before the man who had been quietly bleeding my dead mother's money took the rest of it, including the floor under my feet, in a single legal stroke, and the only person who could prove any of it had vanished into the dark with a bag, leaving me a triangle of paper and a brass key stamped 214. So no, I couldn't sleep after, and by Friday at noon, sleep would be the least of what I stood to lose. I called in my assistant to cover the bakery, told her I had a plumbing emergency, and felt the lie sit in my mouth like a coin. Then I did what Adam told me to do 6 hours too late. I read in order. File 2 was a resume. Adams. Except the Adam on the page wasn't the Adam who fixed my disposal. Adam Reyes, CPA, Certified Fraud Examiner, Senior Forensic Accountant, Halloran and Pierce, LLP, 2019 to 2024. Halloran and Pierce, Daniel's firm. My roommate had worked at my ex-fiance's law firm. My roommate had worked in the department that audits trust accounts at my ex-fiance's law firm until 14 months ago. Until I did the math with a cold feeling climbing my spine, approximately 3 weeks before he answered my roommate ad with cash and a toolbox. File 3 was a termination letter. Halloran and Pierce had fired Adam for unauthorized access to client fiduciary records. The date on the letter was 2 days after the date on a memo Adam had scanned beside it. An internal memo, written by Adam, flagging irregular disbursement patterns in a client trust, requesting a formal review. The trust in the memo had an account number. The account number matched my spreadsheet. He found it. 14 months ago, a quiet accountant at a big firm found the yellow highlighted holes in a dead woman's trust, wrote it up like an honest man, and got fired for it in 48 hours by the partner doing the stealing. And then, instead of walking away, instead of saving himself, he found the daughter. He found her roommate ad. He moved into the crime scene with a toolbox and spent 14 months quietly rebuilding, from inside my kitchen, the case they'd fired him for starting. I sat there holding 14 months of memories up to a new light. Adam asking so casually if Daniel had ever given back my spare key after the breakup. Adam installing the smoke detector. Adam offering to organize my mother's paperwork one rainy Sunday, and me saying no, it's fine, Daniel handles all that, and the look on his face that I'd read as shyness and now recognized as a man watching a door close. He hadn't answered a roommate ad, he'd enlisted, and underneath the gratitude something hot and hurt. 14 months. 14 months of movie nights and split groceries and him knowing, every single day knowing, while I made Daniel's excuses at family dinners. I didn't know yet whether I'd been protected or used. File 12, the last one, was labeled for Mara, only if I don't come back, and I hovered over it, and I am telling you it took everything I had, but this one time, I didn't skip ahead. Some part of me understood that opening it early would make it true. My phone rang. An unknown number, local. I answered like a fool. Ms. Ellison? A woman's voice, brisk. This is Detective Sarah Okafor. Financial crimes. I'm trying to reach Adam Reyes. I understand he's your tenant. When did you last see him? Everything in me went very still. Why are you looking for Adam? There's an active complaint, ma'am. Allegations that Mr. Reyes stole confidential financial records and may have accessed client funds. If he contacts you, you need to understand. Assisting him could expose you as well. A pause, papers shuffling. The complaint was filed by his former employer. A Mr. Voss was very helpful in providing documentation. A Mr. Voss was very helpful. I looked at the timeline Adam had built me, laid out in files 2 and 3, and I saw the shape of it whole for the first time. Adam flags the theft. Adam gets fired. And now, this week, of all weeks, 3 days before the money moves, Daniel walks into a police station carrying documentation and turns the one witness into the suspect. It was elegant. It was so elegant I felt sick. Every piece of evidence Adam touched could now be framed as something he stole. If Adam surfaced, he'd be arrested, and the files would become fruit of his crime. If he stayed gone, Friday came, the transfer cleared, the trust dissolved, and the paper trail dissolved with it. Daniel hadn't just built a theft. He'd built a clock, and he'd built a cage for the only man who could stop it. And he'd built both so well that the police were now, in perfect good faith, guarding the getaway. Ma'am, if he contacts you, I'll call you, I said, and hung up, and stood in my kitchen shaking. And that's when the doorbell rang, and through the peephole, holding 2 coffees and wearing the gray coat I bought him for his birthday 2 years ago, was Daniel. I opened the door because you don't show a man like Daniel that you know. I learned that too late about too many things, but I learned it. You look terrible, he said warmly, handing me a coffee I did not drink. I've been worried sick since last night. Can I come in? He came in. He sat in my reading chair, his chair, said the 11 clips. And he crossed his legs and did the thing he does, the thing I once mistook for love, where he lowers his voice into a register of gentle concern and rearranges your reality for you. Mara, there are things about Adam you don't know. The police are involved now, so you'll hear it anyway. He was terminated from my firm for stealing client records. We think he's been running some kind of long con on vulnerable people. Widows. Heirs. A pause. Surgical. Women alone. Women alone, I repeated. I know how it sounds. But think about it. Cash deposit, no references you actually called, and now he vanishes in the middle of the night? He shook his head, sorrowful. I should have vetted him for you. I'll always feel responsible for you. You know that. Whatever's mine to fix here, I'll fix. And here is the thing I need you to understand about that moment. He was good. If I hadn't spent the night on my kitchen floor with the spreadsheet, I would have believed him. That was the most frightening thing in my apartment that morning. Not the SUV, not the deadline. It was watching a man lie to my face with total fluency and realizing he had been exactly this good for 3 years. At dinners, at my mother's funeral, at the reading of her will. How did you know Adam left with a bag? I asked. Last night, your text. Not a flicker. Told you. Drove past after the airport. Your flight got in at 9. I hadn't known that. I said it like I did. 1 second. Half of one. A tightening at the corner of his eyes, there and gone, and then the smile again, wider, and he stood, and smoothed his coat, and walked to my door, and with his hand on the knob he turned and delivered, in the gentlest voice imaginable, the only honest sentence of his visit. Grief makes people paranoid, Mara. Be careful who you let it point you at. He glanced around my apartment, the trust's apartment, one slow proprietary sweep. Friday's just paperwork. Nothing for you to worry about. I'll handle everything, like always. The door clicked shut behind him with the softness of a man who has never once needed to slam anything, because the system slams it for him. I counted to 20. Then I went to the window, watched the gray coat cross the street, and watched him stop, beside my parked car, and crouch by the rear wheel well for 4 seconds, adjusting something, before walking on. I was in the street in my slippers before his taillights turned the corner. I ran my hand up inside the wheel well the way you do when you already know, and my fingers closed on a small magnetic box, and inside the box a matte black disc was blinking one slow green blink, patient as a heartbeat. A tracker. On my car. And by the pollen sealed over the magnet, it had been there a long, long time before last night. He hadn't seen Adam leave from the street. He'd been watching both of us. For months. Which meant one more thing. The thing that sent me back inside at a dead run for the brass key stamped 214. If Daniel tracked me everywhere I drove, then wherever Adam had hidden the originals, I could never drive there. But somebody was about to. Here is what I did with the tracker, and I'm still a little proud of it. I didn't smash it, I didn't throw it in the river, I walked 2 blocks to the bakery, and I stuck it under the bumper of the flour supplier's delivery truck, which spends every Wednesday driving to 11 restaurants across 3 counties. Let him watch that little green dot have the busiest day of its life. Then I turned my phone fully off, borrowed my assistant's ancient hatchback and drove, clean, unwatched, checking my mirrors like a woman in a movie, to the only thing 214 could be. Adam's gym has lockers. His office was gone. His apartment was mine. But every Saturday for 14 months, Adam had driven to a self-storage place on Route 9 to, he said, deal with some of my mom's old furniture. Every Saturday. For 14 months. No furniture ever came or went. Unit 214 was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a corridor that smelled like cardboard and cold metal. The key turned like it had been waiting. There was no furniture inside. There was a folding table, a lamp, a corkboard, and the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, banker's boxes, 9 of them, labeled in Adam's block capitals, originals, certified copies, chain of custody. He hadn't just gathered evidence, he'd curated it, dated it, notarized what could be notarized, kept a log of where every page came from, a fired forensic accountant building, alone, on Saturdays, a case so clean that no one could ever again call it stolen fruit. On the corkboard, dead center, was a business card, Priya Nair, CFE, Office of the State Attorney General, Financial Fraud Unit, with a date written across the top in red. This past Monday, the day before Adam vanished. He hadn't run, he'd gone in. And Daniel had filed his police complaint the very next morning, which meant Daniel knew Adam had gone to the state, which meant Daniel's clock and my clock were the same clock. Get the money out and the trust dissolved by Friday noon, before the Attorney General's office could move. But the box that broke me open was the small one. For Mara. On top, in a plastic sleeve, was a document I had never seen in my life. First Amendment to the Ellison Family Trust, dated 8 weeks before my mother died. Signed by her. Witnessed by 2 nurses whose names I recognized from the oncology ward. Notarized. I read it standing up. Then I sat down on a banker's box and read it again. My mother, my sick, sharp, underestimated mother, had changed her trust in the last 2 months of her life. She had removed Daniel Voss as trustee. Removed him entirely, revoked every power, named an independent fiduciary in his place, and appended, in her own shaky handwriting, a note to the file that I will hear in her voice for the rest of my life. I have watched Mr. Voss count my daughter's money with his eyes at 3 separate dinners. I may be dying, but I am not blind. E.E. She knew. Before any spreadsheet, before any camera, before Adam, she knew, the way mothers know, and she had done something about it with the last strength she had. And Daniel, the attorney entrusted with filing that amendment, had simply not filed it. He buried the original, administered the old trust as if her last clear-eyed act had never happened, and stood at her funeral with his hand on my shoulder. Every withdrawal for 2 years hadn't just been theft. It had been theft by a man with no legal authority at all, a trustee my mother had already fired from her deathbed. I cried in a storage unit on Route 9 for a solid 10 minutes, and they were the strangest tears of my life, because they were grief and fury and pride. She counted everything. She always counted everything. Under the amendment was an envelope with my name on it in Adam's handwriting, not typed, not block capitals, handwritten and creased, like it had been carried in a pocket for a while before it was brave enough to be left in a box. Mara. If you're reading this in the unit, then it worked, or it's Friday and it didn't, and either way you deserve the whole truth from me and not from a folder. I came to find you because of what I found at the firm. That part is true and I won't dress it up. I moved in for the evidence. But then you left the porch light on the first night I worked late, and you fought me for the last dumpling like it was a legal matter, and you sang while you proofed bread at 5 in the morning when you thought I was asleep, and somewhere in month 2 the case stopped being the reason. I moved in for the evidence. I stayed for you. I never told you because the moment I told you you'd have looked at Daniel differently and he watches your face the way I watch the numbers. I needed him comfortable. I'm sorry that keeping you safe and lying to you turned out to be the same 14 months. If I'm not back by Thursday night, take everything in this room to Priya Nair. Her cell is on the back of the card. Don't go to the local police first. His complaint is sitting there with my name on it, and they'll do their jobs, and their jobs are exactly what he's counting on. And Mara, the porch light. I never once needed it to find the door. I just liked what it meant. I'm not going to tell you how long I sat with that letter. Some things are mine. What I'll tell you is that it was Wednesday evening when I came down out of Unit 214 with the amendment in a folder against my chest, and my borrowed car had a parking ticket, and my turned-off phone, when I finally turned it on at a gas station 8 miles away, exploded with everything Daniel had spent the day doing, while his little green dot toured county restaurants. 4 texts, escalating from warm to something with a wire showing, "Coffee again tomorrow, we should talk about the condo logistics." Then, "Tried the bakery, your girl says plumbing emergency. Everything all right?" Then, "Mara, your car has been at a rest stop on I-80 for 3 hours. Should I be worried?" Sent, beautifully, while I stood in a storage unit and his tracker rode a flower truck. And then the last one, 6:52 p.m., the mask fully down. Just spoke with Detective Okafor. She was very interested to hear that Adam had a female accomplice helping him access trust documents. I told her I was sure that couldn't be you. Don't make me less sure. Friday noon. Don't be stupid. There it was. Not an ex checking in. A man with a badge on speed dial. A deadline on the calendar. My home in his transfer paperwork. And now, in writing, because his arrogance had finally outrun his caution, a threat to feed me to his own frame-up if I moved. He thought he was showing me his power. He was handing me Exhibit A. I stood at that gas station under the white lights and I did the math my mother would have done. It was Wednesday, 7 p.m. The transfer cleared Friday at noon. 41 hours. 1 woman, 9 boxes, 1 amendment, 1 AG investigator's cell number, and 1 missing accountant who was either sitting in a federal conference room or a holding cell, and I had no way to know which. 41 hours. I called the number on the back of the card. Priya Nair answered on the second ring, at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, with the voice of a woman who has never once been surprised by a phone call. "Ms. Ellison, I was hoping you'd find the unit." A beat. "He said you'd skip ahead and find it early. He was very insistent about that. Something about the last pages of books." My knees actually went soft against the borrowed car. "He's with you, Adam. Is he?" "Mr. Reyes came to us Monday with a preliminary package. Tuesday morning, a criminal complaint appeared against him with impeccable timing, so we advised him to go completely dark while we verified his materials independently. No phone, no contact with anyone Mr. Voss might be monitoring." She let that word monitoring sit there a second, and I understood. They knew about the tracker before I did. "He's safe. He is also," and here her voice did something I'd later learn was her version of a smile, "the single most annoyingly organized whistleblower I have encountered in 19 years. He alphabetized his own chain of custody log." I laughed. It came out half sob. "In a gas station parking lot, holding my dead mother's last legal act against my chest." I laughed. Then Priya got quiet in a way that made the lights feel colder. "Now listen carefully, because we have a problem. Everything Adam brought us a defense attorney will attack as records taken by a fired employee. It's good. It's not unbreakable. Your mother's amendment changes the entire case. An unfiled trust amendment removing him as trustee turns 3 years of fees into 3 years of theft by a man with no authority. But an amendment we can't authenticate is a piece of paper." She paused. "The witnesses, 2 nurses. We need one of them on the record, before Friday. Or Voss's attorneys tie the amendment up in a handwriting fight for 2 years, while the money sits offshore. And Ms. Ellison, we cannot stop Friday's transfer with suspicion. A judge freezes assets on evidence, not on a story. You have the boxes. I have jurisdiction. Between tonight and Friday noon, we need to turn one into the other. Tell me what to do. 3 things. Tonight, you drive the originals to me. I'll text you an address, and you will leave your phone at that gas station's Lost and Found. I'm quite serious. Tomorrow, you find me a nurse. And Friday morning, the smile again audible. Friday morning, you go to the closing, exactly as if you're going to sign. He needs to believe he's won until the moment the freeze order is in the room. Can you sit across a table from him and let him believe that? I thought about 11 clips of Daniel in my reading chair, 3 years of dinners, my mother's shaking handwriting. I am not blind. I've had practice being underestimated by him, I said. One more morning won't hurt. I'll compress Thursday for you, but understand that living it was not compressed. Thursday was driving 9 banker's boxes across the state line at midnight to a woman in a government plain office who received my mother's amendment with 2 gloved hands, like it was made of glass, and said quietly, "Your mother had excellent instincts." Thursday was 3 hours of sleep on Priya's office couch. Thursday was calling the oncology ward at 7 a.m. and learning that one witness nurse had moved to Arizona, and the second, Nurse Dominguez, still worked Thursdays. Thursday was me standing in a hospital corridor at 2 p.m. while a 50-year-old nurse read the amendment and watched her face move through confusion, then memory, then something like iron. "I remember her," she said. "Room 4. She made us close the door and read every line out loud twice. She said," the nurse looked up at me, she said, "My daughter thinks I don't see things. Make sure the paper sees them." And then Nurse Dominguez sat down with Priya's deputy and a recorder and put 20 minutes of sworn statement on the record. And somewhere in an office across the state, an emergency motion started printing. Thursday night was the worst part, and it was the part where nothing happened. Home, alone, phone recovered and back on so Daniel's tracker brain would see normalcy. My car parked outside, my lights on their usual schedule, a woman defeated and waiting for noon. At 9:40 p.m. the doorbell rang and my heart went through the ceiling, but it was a delivery I hadn't ordered, an obscene bouquet of white lilies. Funeral flowers, he knew exactly what he was sending, with a card in Daniel's handwriting. "To New Beginnings. See you at noon. Wear something nice. The title office has cameras." He was gloating. 38 months of patience, and he was spending it all in 1 week of gloating, and every gloat was going into an evidence bag on my kitchen counter, because I am my mother's daughter, and now I count everything too. I did not sleep Thursday night either. But this time it wasn't fear. It was the specific insomnia of a runner in the blocks. Friday, 11:40 a.m. The title office was all glass and gray carpet, and Daniel was already seated at the long table when I walked in, flanked by a junior associate and a stack of folders, wearing the gray coat and the beautiful teeth. He rose to pull out my chair. He actually rose to pull out my chair. "You look tired," he said with tenderness. "It'll all be over soon." "You have no idea," I said, and sat, and let him believe I meant surrender. For 12 minutes I watched him perform. He narrated the documents to me the way you'd explain rain to a child. This one concludes the trust. This one transfers title. Sign here. Initial here. Your mother would want this settled. I asked small, dim questions to run the clock. I held the pen. I want to be honest with you. Holding that pen, looking at the signature line that would have handed him the last of her, some tired part of me whispered how easy it would be. That's the true thing about men like Daniel. They don't just steal money. They exhaust you until signing feels like rest. At 11:53, I set the pen down. "One question first," I said. "The trust you're concluding, who's the trustee?" His smile didn't move, but something behind it did. "You know I am, Mara." "That's so strange," I said, and I heard my mother in my own voice, level as a spirit level. "Because I have an amendment dated April 9th that says she fired you." The door opened. Priya Nair came in first, then Detective Okafor, who had spent Thursday afternoon receiving a very educational briefing and did not look pleased with the week. Then a man with a folder containing a signed order that froze every account, every asset, and every transfer connected to the Ellison Trust as of 11:47 a.m. And behind them, hands in his jacket pockets, looking like he hadn't slept in 5 days and like the sight of me was the first thing that had worked all week, was Adam. I'd love to tell you Daniel raged. He didn't. Men like Daniel don't rage, they recalculate. I watched it happen behind his eyes in real time, the lawyer running down every exit and finding paper stacked in front of each one. The amendment, authenticated by a living witness. The spreadsheet, now reconstructed independently from subpoenaed bank records, untouched by Adam's hands. The camera footage of 11 illegal entries. The tracker photographed in place, pollen and all. His own texts, his own lilies, his own card. See you at noon. He looked at Adam last, and finally said, softly, the only unguarded thing I ever heard him say, "You were an accountant. You were nobody." "I know," Adam said. "You should have paid more attention to the nobodies. We keep the records." "You counted wrong, Daniel," I said, standing. "She counted everything. They didn't arrest him at the table. It doesn't work like the movies," Priya had warned me. And she was right. It works slower and it works better. But they escorted him out past the title office cameras he'd told me to dress nicely for, and by the following spring, the man who spent 3 years signing my mother's money to himself in slices was signing very different documents, in a very different building, and the word disbarment had stopped being hypothetical. The trust came back. Most of it, some money is simply gone when it's gone, and I've made peace with that because the amendment came back too, and that was never about money. Her sentence lives in a court record now. Permanent, public. I may be dying, but I am not blind. My mother's last words on file are a mic drop. Of course they are. But you're not still here for the court records. You're here for the hallway. Because at 12:20 p.m. on that Friday, on the gray carpet outside the title office, everyone else went to file things, and it was suddenly, absurdly, just me and Adam, my roommate, my hidden accountant, the man who folded his last note into a triangle because he knew a rectangle wouldn't make me curious enough, standing 4 feet apart like two people who had rehearsed everything except this. "You read the note," he said. "Every word." My voice cracked on it. "You read the porch light. Every night." He took one step. "Mara, I need to say the whole thing out loud once, not in a letter. I lied to you for 14 months. It was the right call, and it was still a lie. And if that's the thing you can't get past, I'll help you find a new roommate, and I'll go. No speeches. And if it isn't the thing I can't get past," he looked at me the way he looked at the numbers, like something that finally added up. And then this man, who had waited 14 months, outplanned a predator, and slept in an attorney general's office to protect me, took one step back and said, "Then not today. You just got your life unfrozen. You should stand in it a minute without anyone new asking for a piece of it. A breath. Ask me tomorrow, when you're only yours." Reader, I asked him at 12:01 the next morning. I skip ahead. He knew that about me before he knew anything else. The note is framed now. It hangs in our kitchen, above the coffee tin, next to a photograph of my mother, and people who visit think it's strange, framing a note that terrifying, until I tell them what I've learned and what I'll leave you with. The scariest thing I ever read at 3 a.m. was also the truest thing anyone ever gave me. Daniel filled 3 years with beautiful words, and every one was a withdrawal. Adam gave me 20 words on a folded triangle, and every one was a deposit. Love isn't the volume of what someone says to you, it's whether the accounts reconcile. So before you go, I have to ask you 2 things, and I want real answers in the comments, because this channel runs on your stories the way I now run on Very Good Forensic Accounting. First, if you woke up at 3 a.m. to a note on your pillow that said don't trust the person you trust most, be honest. Would you have opened the coffee tin, or would you have called that person first? What would you have done at 3:04 a.m.? And second, the one that matters. Have you ever realized, too late or almost too late, that the person quietly protecting you was someone you'd been overlooking the whole time? A friend, a roommate, a mother who saw what you couldn't. Who was it? Did you ever get the chance to tell them? Tell me about them below. Somebody down there needs to read it tonight at 3 a.m. If this story kept you up the way that note kept me up, subscribe, because next week I'm telling you about the wedding invitation that arrived with my own handwriting on it, and I promise you, I did not send it.